Welcome to a snowy day in Oklahoma. We're going to work on the M5 today. So today we're going to do is we're going to put E85 kit from Advanced Fuel Dynamics on the M5. So those of you who know the car, it's a V10, it's a 5-liter V10, has a red line of 8,250, 507 brake horsepower, and you know, it's a runner. But the E85 can really make a difference. And we'll talk about that, you know, a little later after we do some testing. But right now, believe it or not, with the Euro tune on this, I'm getting probably about 13 to 14 miles per gallon on average on a regular drive. That means, you know, hard pulls, regular driving, through the gear range, city and highway mix. I don't think we're gonna get a whole lot better gas mileage on the 85, but B, with this high compression engine, this 5-liter S85 V10, I think we should get some really great results as far as probably about 20 to 30 wheel horsepower. Let's get it on the lift. But getting these plenums off, man, it's really advantageous to be able to see under right in the edge there without breaking your back bending over constantly. We're just going to take it up and then we're going to set it on its first set of locks. So once we have it up on the lift, something that we want to do, and it doesn't matter really what you're doing on the car, period, 100%, disconnect your battery. It's a really critical part. Who knows what you might end up touching a wrench from positive to negative, shorten out your power control module, talking about big bucks, big problems. But there is something interesting about the M5 versus other E65 series. Now, if you'll notice, there's no keyhole back here. So, especially if your spring and your strut rod in here is weak and the hood and the trunk might close on you, you definitely want to make sure that you put something in the latch here so that it doesn't close on you. Because if it closes and locks on you and the battery's disconnected, you got to pull the back seat up, and that's where there's a lever or a little wire cable to pull to pop the trunk. There's really no other way into the trunk other than that. So it's real simple. We're going to lift up the cover here. And if you have the M5, you'll know this. If you're looking to get the M5, you might not. But you know how most 5 Series and 7s, the battery's over here on the right. Here it's dead center. There's no spare tire. And that's really for weight distribution purposes. So what we're going to do is we're disconnect the negative. That's the only one we need to disconnect. And I'm actually going to get a rag to put under here just so I'm sure that it doesn't end up touching while we're working. I just have a shop towel here, 10 millimeter. And you also want to be really careful with this 10 millimeter nut on this bolt. Both unloosening them and tightening them, these bolts get very soft, and they are very soft aluminum. If you undo it too much, you can break it, and if you tighten it too much, you can break it, and then you got a problem. This little piece here, this negative connector into this assembly, which we'll talk about in another video, is super expensive to replace. So we're just going to wiggle it off, and we're just going to put our shop towel right there. So next thing that we're going to do here, we're going to grab our T25, our Torx, and we have the same bolt here on this side, but I wanted to talk about these two connectors. Sometimes people will take this off and just let them hang. I really recommend that you disconnect them. Just be real careful because, you know, the plastic does get brittle as they get old. But this is a hood switch, and on the M5 it's super important. If your hood's open and this switch does not make contact, it will not let you put the car in drive or reverse. And sometimes we'll even throw a code. So this is your hood switch. We pull that off. But what this does, believe it or not, is this senses CO2 being taken into the cabin from the outside. And if there's CO2, let's say a diesel truck in front of you, spewing a lot of black smoke, rolling and coaling, this will actually turn the air conditioning and climate control system onto recirc so that it's not pulling in the CO2 laden air from the outside. So this just pulls off as well. And then we'll just take this little wire harness and kind of flip it over. One of the reasons that we want to always take off the battery is because there's all types of stuff like that that we need to do. So here's this T25. Okay, so we're going to take our 13, which I have to grab right here, and we're going to take these quarter turn bolts off. And then we're going to open up our spring bar. And then we're going to take this whole puppy out with the switch and the sensor. Once again, once you have these 3/4 turn 13 millimeters off and your T25 there, this lifts up and pulls out. So this is T45. Be careful, if these things aren't cleaned out and you strip them, you're gonna have a real problem. So this is a T45. Get your T45 nice and straight in. Make sure your drill's in reverse. And an impact works great for these. And never full on just pull the trigger. Just work it loose. If you really give it a whole lot of power and a whole lot of gas here, you could really strip this top right off of the screw itself. And that's never good. It's also nice to have a magnet around just in case you drop something. And it is crazy how lightweight. Feel that, Pat?
Yep.
It's like nothing. Unbelievable. But it does its job. And we're going to take these 4 T45s and we're going to put them in the right spot. I am super, you know, my dad used to yell at me when I was a kid for not putting his tools back. Whenever I'm done with something, I put it back. And here's the reason. And I know I'm probably telling you something that you know, but next time I go for it and there's a whole pile of stuff here, man, it takes a long time just to find what you need. And there's nothing more frustrating than that. So people say, you know, why do you constantly back and forth to your toolbox? Because I'm trying to stay organized. You know, on this car, a lot of things are T10s, T13s. So a lot of times, you know, I'll leave those specific with their extensions right on the sides here because I'm constantly back and forth. But for the non-standard stuff, why do it? So a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about is super elementary, and I'm sure that if you've worked on these cars that you know it. But I'll tell you what, when I first started working on these cars, I would have loved if someone would have told me kind of what to grab. So to take these off here, which are, you know, our air ducts that have our mass airflow sensors attached. And remember, on this V10, there's bank 1 and bank 2, and they all have duplicates of everything. I'm using, you know, because mostly I use a 3/8, I have a 3/8, excuse me, to 1/4 inch adapter. And then I have a little extension here with a number 8. I really like extensions. You know, it keeps you from hitting the car and whatnot, nicking things up. What we're gonna do is we're gonna unloosen these bands, disconnect our mass airflow sensor, and then we're just gonna pull these tubes, right? Because we need this area open just a little bit. So I'm gonna put my my Cyclops light on here just so you can see this a little better. This mass airflow sensor, it's got 2 little push on the side here, and then just wiggle it off. And it's connected to the wire harness that goes through. So just very carefully move it back behind, and you'll see right in here how it's on a pivot, okay? But it doesn't want to be pivoted around in circles. I'm just gonna pull this boot, and we're just gonna wiggle this guy out. Now, it is important that we make sure that we put the right one on the right side and the left one on the left side, and the reason for that is, if you look here on a mass airflow sensor, air is flowing through here from the intake, and this is where all the sensing happens as far as humidity, barometric pressure, and volume of air, so the DME engine computer can read it. So as you can see, we got plenty of room to get to our injectors here, and we'll talk about the advanced dynamics kit here in a little bit, but we need access to this. So, you know, you really could do this. The fifth cylinder back there is a little tough to get to, but we're going to pull the plenums off because, as I said, we need to repair that plenum adapter anyway. So what we're going to do now is we just have to kind of get our coolant recirculation expansion tank out of the way. By the way, if you have an M5, if you have a 550, if you have any 5 series, if you have a 7 series, if you have a 3 series, it doesn't matter. If this thing is more than 4 or 5 years old, save yourself a big problem and order one up. ECS Turning, FCP Euro, they all have them in stock. This is, believe it or not, a wear item on all BMWs. This weld, this plastic weld that runs all the way around the top, after so many expansions and contractions, you will have problems, and it will leak, and you will have white crap all over your engine bay, and you also have a possibility of losing your coolant and overheating. So these pipes right here, flex line, very brittle in the middle. So just be careful. We have another 10 down here that we need to pull. I need to get a longer extension, and we're gonna take our 10 off down here. And that's gonna free up our expansion tank. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna very carefully lift it from its little grommet deal, but I have to just move this air box a little bit first. We're gonna just lift this out ever so carefully, and we're gonna take this connector right off of here. It's your typical pinch and pull. That's your coolant level sensor, and we're just gonna navigate this hose and just kind of put it right there. Okay, so yes, we're pinching this hose down here, but very, very slightly, okay? This gives us a nice spot to rest it on, gives us plenty of room to get to our plenum. Okay, so we're just gonna do the same over here. We removed our 1-inch clip. Just gonna nice and easily pull these down. Now over here, it's a little bit more of a pain because, as you can see, we have the wiring harness coming into the DME, and it actually connects to the back of the plenum. Deep back in here, you're gonna see that we've got 2 valves, one on top, or not valves, but 2 hoses, one on top of the other right here. One for each of these. These are vacuum hoses. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna squeeze the interlock here. They're like, I know it's tough to see, but they're like the push that we'll see right up in the front here. They're identical, they're just smaller. So we're just gonna pop that one off. My hands are too big to get in here. There we go. We're just gonna pop the bottom off, and then you'll feel it as you just compress that top part, and it'll just pop off. This side's a little harder to see. Actually, it's way harder to see. These are 6mm. Some of them were 5.5s. But that little ring needs to be unloosened at all 5 across here. And it's a tight fit, but you get to your back 2 right here. The front one, we're coming in here, and then there's 2 on the sides. And we do that on both sides. You unloosen them, and then your plenum's gonna pop up. These 2 right here, I don't know if you can see where I'm going there. put this as a number 6, and we're just going to get with our extension. It's a little wonky, so we're on that one. And what we're going to do is, we don't want to unloosen it too far, but we got to have it definitely released enough so you can look. It's a lot easier to see in person, but you can look in there and see where the tail of that metal strap is. Okay, so we got that one off, and then this one is down on a very strange angle. This one's actually easier to get out than the one on the bank 1. It's just getting it lined up. And it's just, you know, always just unloosen them enough, because such a pain to get it connected again, because you need like a quarter turn to get it off. Okay, so we have those back 1, 2. We're going for this one right here. You know, Pat, every time I take these off, they never seem to be tight enough, yet I tighten them exactly the right way. I guess it's due to the heat and the expansion. Now we're going to come in on the other side right here. Move our expansion tank just a little bit. And we're coming in here. On this stuff, I never use any power tools. Everything by hand. And then we can kind of set this back where it likes to live temporarily. And this one, I'm going to show you how these are set, okay? But this one, we're coming in here on bank 2 from this angle. And the other side, it's totally different. And I will include a link to a diagram, because first time I did this, I did it blind. And, you know, just having a little bit of input as far as where to come in to take these off. So this one, remember on bank 2 over here, we came in on an angle. On this one, we're going to slide back, and you really need a 1/4 inch extension. And we're going to get on this second cylinder back on the left, right there. We're going to unloosen that guy. Okay. And you just want to be careful you don't lose your ratchet in there. And we're going to come in right behind for number 1 on this bank. So we did the second one first, we did the first one. Now we've got 3 more. This one's the easy McGeezy to get to here.
Action.
Okay, so we're ready to go. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pop up the front a little bit. And it is a tight fit, it takes a little bit of a wiggle. Okay, and then you see that we have 2 vacuum hoses attached right here. So you just reach on the side of them and pop it down. So squeeze in. Pop this rubber grommet that holds the 2 plenums together. Just pop that rubber off, and you can get your fingers in there a lot easier. Squeeze these together, pull them off just like that. There she is. So a lot of you have heard about throttle body issues. The throttle bodies really aren't what create the issue, it's the throttle body actuators. And that's these guys, and they're buried under there, which actually is not a very hard thing to do. These actuators I've been testing. I have no issues with the actuators or any of the control units here. But I think this is so super cool when you're working on this and you have the plenums off, that you get to see all of these 10 individual throttle bodies, which is completely unique to the V10, S85, and also the V8 that you find in the M3. So I'm by no stretch an expert or have any of the knowledge that Advanced Fuel does, but they've got some great videos. We'll put some links to those, and they also have some dyno testing on this specific V10 M5. So this is the Proflex Commander. It is the Pro version, which means that adaptations down the road, injector values, high pressure fuel pumps, all that type of stuff, whatever you add, this thing can handle it down the road. And I think it was like $100 difference. Absolutely worth going with the Pro version, being that it'll operate just like the non-Pro version, unless you go and you update injectors and whatever the other tunes are that can take advantage of that. So I figured for the extra $100, might as well have the top shelf one. Comes well packaged, well protected. Proflex Commanders. These are one for each bank. This goes in the fuel line. You'll see how we're gonna put that in our fuel line with this hose, this adaptation hose that they gave. And this is what actually allows the commanding system to read the amount of E85. So E85 ranges from 50 to 85% ethanol. If you tune your car for E85, 100% 85, then you've got to make sure that it's getting 85% ethanol, 15% gasoline. This little beauty here actually will adapt, and there's a phone app that will show you, and it'll show you, you know, we're gonna start the car and run the car, and there's 91 octane in the fuel tank, and it's gonna show you the amount of ethanol that's in that. So it constantly adapts itself. All depends on how much ethanol you put in. So you can go full E85. A lot of the gas stations you go to, their E85 ethanol can be, like I said, anywhere from like 51% to 85%. So I think something that's important, you know, is a lot of us just tend to grab stuff and put it in, but they make it very clear here, some do not do's. So that's pretty important stuff. Wiring harness is very expensive. It's an expensive part of this whole system. They do have install instructions on their website, which I've reviewed intently. And I mean, the install instructions are like 10 lines long. This is such a simple deal. And I want to reiterate, you know, 91 octane. I believe, you know, I always go for the straight 91 gas. But if you do have any gas in your tank that's got ethanol in it, it's gonna tell us, which is gonna be pretty cool. So bone stock, adding this, the car's gonna run much better because it's gonna be adapting for the ethanol that's in the regular gas that we buy every day. So what we have here is we have a short side to the wiring loom and a long side, and you'll see how we do that when we go back over to the car. But what's basically going to happen is we are going to be connecting this side to the injector, and then the harness that was connected to the injector is going to plug into this side. Then we have our two Proflex command modules, which will connect. We'll show you where we're going to hide those. And then this is the connection for our E85 inline sensor. And then we have a ground wire, which is going to connect right to the same ground peg and bolt that the DME does. That way they're grounded to the exact same source, should have zero interference. All right, let's look right down in here. This is our fuel line. There's a little clip here that needs to come off first. It's like a safety clip. So we definitely don't want to lose that guy right there. So I'm just going to get a pick and pop that off. You just want to be careful because this has been in a lot of heat cycles and you definitely don't want to break it. And there it is. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get a rag here, because what we're going to do is we're going to disconnect our fuel line. Now remember, it's considered low pressure until it gets to the high pressure pump up here, but you're still going to get some dribbles. So we just want to make sure that we get nothing anywhere that we shouldn't. And also, you know, it's always good to protect your face. So this black guy right here, Pat, can we see that? This is the compression fitting, so we're going to squeeze it together. We're going to squeeze that fitting in once I get my hands in here. And then we're going to pop it off, just like that. And you get just a little bit of dribble of fuel. So we're going to take this 90-degree guy right here, and he is getting clipped on right there. Then this is going to go to our commander, or not our commander, but our sensor unit. That's getting plugged in right there, snapping in. And then there's this adapter that comes with it that goes on the other side, like so. And then our fuel rail line is clipping in right like that. So I think what I'm going to do, though, is I think I'm going to take this off and run it around this edge real quick so that it'll lay in there a lot better. So what I decided to do here was use the, right down here, I'll show you, use the factory clip. That's right here, so that the hose sticks in there real nice. And then once we get everything mounted back in here, we'll be tucking that down in there. But this is one of those processes you guys see how it fits for you as you're going through. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull off all of our injectors and get our wiring harness laid out. So this is how I decided to do it here. We have this on the hard line from the car, 90'd down and into the fittings here on the Commander sensor. This, what we're going to do is we're going to put all of the Commander stuff right over here. So we're going to actually bring it through one of these rubber grommets, but so we can get it tucked away. And the other thing we're going to do is before we actually put everything back, I just like to check the fittings. So before everything's covered back up, we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn the put the battery on, turn the engine on. Or not turn the engine on, but turn the ignition on, and make sure that when the fuel pump pressurizes that we don't have any leaks here that we're gonna find out about later. So this is the short side of the loom, and as we're gonna lay it out here, you're gonna see there's gonna be, for the first cylinder, our second cylinder. This is like a spaghetti web nightmare here to get all laid out. And the wires are nice and long, which is great. Nothing has to be too tight. So as we go down, you're going to see that they get longer and shorter. So your longest is the furthest one. Your next longest is the second one. Next longest will be the third one, the fourth one, and the fifth one. So now that we have that laid out, what we're going to do is we're going to just pop our lines off. So you have to be really careful. They do just pull straight out if you pull on the T and just give it a little plug. If you're not sure how good your plastic is, though, just be extremely careful. You just want to give it a little tug. But you'll actually see these little metal clips there, Pat. Let's show it to them there. That as you pull, you're going to see them spread apart just a little bit right there, and then it comes right out. So now what we're going to do is, you see we have two different ends. We have a male end, we have a female end. So the female end is going to marry up with our injector. So we're just going to turn all these to stand straight up for now. We'll use some wire ties and get everything organized. And once again, just make sure that we've got the shortest going here, right? So we're going to get this down and onto our injector the same way as before, with the release mechanism pointing down. And I know this is really hard to see. It's really hard to see even doing it right here. Get it nice and square before we clip, and then snap it in. So we're going to go ahead and, well, I'll show you, and then this one just plugs in to the top right here in the same fashion. There's only one way it can go because it's got a little rib there that will fit right into there. So it's real important, and they note this in the instructions, that we don't crinkle any of these wires or crinkle these connectors. I imagine that there's some flat solder plates in there tying everything together. So we're gonna go ahead and get this side of the engine done. We'll be right back. Okay, so we got this side kind of squared away here. We wanna make sure that everything is lower than the fuel rail so that when the plenum goes back on, nothing gets crushed. One of the things the install talks about is making sure that these do not get pinched. And in fact, I kind of like having this go under. And you know, you're gonna figure your own way, and I'll probably change this, you know, right, Pat, 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Won't bore you with the details though, but I think on these front ones here, I'm gonna like them going under and around and up. You know, kind of, it makes sure that these lay flat. We have the reservoir back in. We're not gonna fasten it yet because we're gonna pop it up a little bit just to make sure that we don't have any leaks. The long side of the harness we ran right under here, and it'll get zip tied right along here, and then it'll lay out. And once again, same deal on this side, short to next longest to next longest, and so on. So we'll get this side put on and we'll be right back at you. Okay, so everything is plugged up. Everything went successfully over here. You know, no harness breaks or anything. And I'm pretty sure the way that I'm gonna line this stuff up is just like this. You know, the idea is once the plenums are on, that it's a nice clean look, and you really shouldn't see too much at all. I've seen some other people do it where, you know, they put a little too much pressure on these flat plates, and I'm just not interested in, you know, hundreds and hundreds of dollars to replace a harness. So we're gonna route the ground over here into our brake booster box, and then get ready to put everything back on top and do a little testing. So we've got everything laid in and tied in. This will all be covered with the plenum. Same on this side, have it zipped cleanly across the front. And then over here in the brake booster area, we just have the extra wire coiled up, and we'll connect the control modules once we're ready to fire it up for the first time. And we're gonna connect our ground right there. I'm gonna do that right now. Fed the ground wire down around the back and into the electronics box here. And then we're just gonna tighten her down. Now remember, they spec this location for a couple reasons, but most importantly, it's because this is where the DME, the digital motor electronics, basically your engine ECU is also grounded. So we're sure we get a nice, consistent ground across the board. There's nothing more important in these cars than proper ground. In fact, we'll be doing some videos on some issues on a 7 Series and on a 525 that I have outside that are absolutely fantastic condition, mint, but that had ground issues, which is why they didn't work. And got them fixed by figuring out that it was the ground, which unfortunately threw a lot of parts at it until that nailed down. But that's how you learn. And then the next time you check grounds first. So what we're going to do is we're going to get ready and we're going to get our plenums back on, and then we'll be able to reattach our coolant reservoir. Should be good to go. See under here, we need to make sure that those rubber boots get set exactly where they're supposed to be, and then you just very carefully work it down into position. If we don't, we can roll one of those boots up and get it cut just like the ones that we just replaced. While we're doing that, and before we do that fully down, we need to get our vacuum lines firmly reattached. So just as a reminder, we'll show it to you over there, but you have the plenum connector in the back. You have this push-on little guy here, about a 1/2 inch. And you have the 1 inch guy right here. Get it up over there. It's a pretty tight fit. As you can see, the plenum is seated, and it will have a rock on it until it's completely tightened down. But everywhere we look, we've got our boot completely around the valve bodies, and then we have connected this one on the left side plenum, which we will then sit the second plenum in, make the rear connections, get that mounted and pushed up. These look like they connect, but they don't. But a good way to tell that you're properly seated is that they're almost perfectly smooth as far as the inside ridges here. But you'll see that with just a little bit of pressure, we are pretty even. And unfortunately, it's like impossible to really see how they're seated. You really have to peer in there and just make sure that you're where you want to be. I think we're in good shape. This right here will lock our fronts together and provide exactly the proper spacing. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to tighten this up, put our strut bar back on, put our top stuff on. But before we do that, what they want us to do is they want us to start the car once everything's back together, other than these 2 command modules, one for bank 1, one for bank 2 connected. And that makes sure that the wire harness is good and all that. Even though they test it before they send it out, they want you to test it. Cars should run as perfectly as normal. And then we'll shut it off, connect the modules, connect the app to the modules, start the car, and we should be able to start detecting E85 and adjusting for it. So. Fired right up. Running just like it did before the Commanders were installed.